Today we're going to talk about the 10 mistakes that expats make while moving to Poland. Starting with number 10, arriving at the wrong time. Poland has 4 proper seasons, but to be honest, I kind of divide it into 2 seasons. You have like cold season and you have warm season. A lot of people say that summer is better. Winter also has some of its perks. During the winter, rent is going to be a lot more competitive because there's not a lot of people moving. Whereas the summer, there's going to be a lot more apartments and things available, but the rent's going to be a lot more competitive. People are going to be out a lot. The sun is going to be out until really, really late. But there's also a problem that a lot of buildings here in Poland don't have AC. So it can get quite warm during the summer, and trying to move during the summer can be a little annoying as well. Transition months like spring and fall are great for moving because you kind of get the best of both worlds. In the fall, before the school year starts, that's a really good time to secure an apartment. Same with the spring before the summer starts. So like March, April, May is a good time as well. The winters can be quite rough for people who are not used to it. I come from Los Angeles. My family, we come from the Philippines. I know a lot of people from Spain and Italy also have a lot of trouble adjusting to the weather change. It's not so much the cold that's the problem, but it's the really short days. It's still taking me a while to really adjust to the sun setting at like 3 p.m., 4 p.m. If you prepare properly, you take your vitamin C and you know what to expect. Now that this is my 3rd winter here, it's not as bad as the first one. The first one was definitely the worst. If you guys are thinking about moving to Poland, I offer high-level consulting on the move. It will save you a lot of time, money, and energy before moving here. You don't want to make the same mistakes that I did. I'll leave the details in the pinned comment and description down below. Number 9, romanticizing Poland. Many travel videos don't give you an 100% honest assessment of everywhere that you go. I think a lot of people are just afraid to say anything bad about a country that they're visiting. I believe it's important to tell the truth. If you look online to the people who are making content about Poland, if you really pay attention, almost none of them speak Polish, even if they've been here for 5 years, 10 years plus. In my opinion, when these people talk about how nice Poland is, it's very superficial. And I think it's really easy to romanticize Poland if you're just living where all the other expats live, if you don't interact with a lot of local Polish people, if you don't speak the language. You're just kind of this perpetual tourist. Poland is great. I'm not gonna lie. I talk very highly about this country on my channel because I believe that Poland is the future in a lot of ways. The zloty is really strong right now. The economy is very strong. It's a country that's developing very quickly and it's on the rise instead of a lot of countries which are on the decline. Mistake number 8 is not understanding housing options. And unfortunately, they're not the most foreigner friendly. You have regular unfurnished apartments. A lot of the apartments here actually come furnished. You also have some co-living spaces. You have Airbnb. Depending on the length of your stay, it will change the options that you have and if you can speak Polish versus if you cannot speak Polish. If you're a straight up foreigner and you plan on staying here for a long time, I highly recommend working with a real estate agent because they're gonna be able to take care of everything. The downside is that the leases are often 1 year or above. If you're looking for something a little bit more short term, there are other options for that. Co-living spaces are really good, short-term Airbnb. I've even had some of my friends live in hotels. You know, I don't really recommend that, but some people really like that lifestyle too. Especially if you come during the winter months. Polish culture is not extremely social and they're pretty closed off, right? They pretty much just stay within their friends. Now, if you move here from a more social country, for example, like Latin America or Southeast Asia, like Thailand or the Philippines, and you come here during the winter in a regular apartment where you can't speak to your neighbors because people are not really friendly like that, the loneliness and the depression you're going to feel is real. So that's why I like co-living buildings a lot, because having social areas all around you and places where you can socialize with people is very important. Your housing situation will greatly affect your experience here actually, so I highly recommend putting a lot of effort into thinking about it. Number 7, underestimating monthly costs here in Poland. Maybe there are some videos on the internet with people talking about how cheap it is to live in Poland, but Poland is not cheap anymore, especially Warsaw. And Warsaw is quite expensive and food is definitely getting up there. On top of the fact that the zloty is a lot stronger now. So about a year ago, the dollar was 1 to 4 Polish zloty. Now it's like 1 to 3.5. About a 15% difference just from the exchange rate alone. That means that Poland is in a really good spot right now. I still think it's not as expensive as a lot of the Western European countries, especially for what you get in terms of quality of life and value and safety. But don't come here thinking you're going to be spending Southeast Asia prices. You know, maybe 5-6 years ago, it was very cheap to live here. That is not the case anymore. Rent, especially in Warsaw, makes up a very high percentage of the people's income here, but groceries are still relatively cheap. Public transport is very cheap. There's a lot of cheap things to do around the city. You don't need to be spending a lot of money like you would be in a place like London. And restaurants also are still quite affordable. But if you are pretty frugal, you can still live on a pretty low cost of living. But that depends based on the city that you will live in. So if you're in Warsaw, because it's a big city, obviously it'll be more expensive. If you want to move to Wrocław, Łódź, Krakow or Poznan, way cheaper. Also, when you find rent online, you'll see that they'll give you a price, but it usually doesn't include utilities and trash and internet and all these other expenses that you didn't think about. You might have to buy some cutlery, you might have to buy some pots and pans. So number 6 is arriving without money saved up. A lot of people, when they make a drastic move, they don't save up a lot of money. They're just like, I'm gonna go to this new country and figure it out. This is the mentality I had when I first went to Colombia 5 years ago, and I've learned a lot over this time. I highly recommend people coming with at least 3 to 6 months of living expenses saved up because it will save you a lot of time and headache. A lot of people think that they wanna come to this country, try to find a job here. If you don't speak Polish, the competition is gonna be extremely fierce because Polish people are highly educated. If they come from here, their wages are not going to be as high as people from the West, like in Germany or the US. So you're gonna be competing with a lot of the locals, and not just the Polish people, but also the Ukrainians, the people from Central Asia, a lot of these Russian speakers who have migrated to this country. Moving to Poland is not like a spur of the moment thing. This is something that requires a lot of time and planning so you do it correctly. Mistake number 5, not understanding Polish bureaucracy. One of the strengths and weaknesses of this country is that the corruption levels in general are quite low, which means that if you apply for residency, there is no way for you to pay extra money to speed up the process. You have to fall in line like everybody else. Unfortunately, depending on which office you apply for, you can apply in Katowice, which I believe is one of the slower places or faster places, I'm not sure. I know people who have applied in Poznan or Łódź and are still backed up. They're still 2 years waiting for their karta pobytu, which is like their residency card. But I've had friends who've gotten it in less than a year. I have submitted all the necessary paperwork and I've got my fingerprints already finished. So now I'm just waiting for the decision. And it's been about a year already. I applied in last January. I believe I would have gotten it sooner if I didn't move from Krakow to Warsaw. That introduced a lot of complications into my process. For the most part, I think if you do everything correctly, the residency process takes up to a year and a half, 2 years. But for most people, it can probably take around a year. A lot of these offices don't speak proper English. If you're a foreigner and you don't speak Polish, trying to do all of this by yourself can be very confusing. There are certain things to know. For example, getting a PESEL number, which is Poland's way of like getting an identification number. As a foreigner, you can do it, but you have to do it through a certain process. And you need a PESEL to do pretty much anything, to make doctor's appointments, to open up a bank account. So this is very important. I was able to do it by myself, but that's because I've been studying Polish. But if you're doing this, no Polish, complete foreigner, have no clue what to do, you're gonna make a lot of mistakes. So that's why I highly recommend working with a professional to deal with the Polish bureaucracy. Mistake number 4 is waiting too long to legalize your stay. If you didn't know, a lot of Americans were able to stay in Poland without a visa because of a bilateral agreement that the US and Poland had that allowed us to come in for 90 days as long as we left to a non-Schengen country and flew in from a non-Schengen country. We would have gotten a new 90 days. It resets the timer, completely bypassing the Schengen limit that we have. So this allowed us to be legal in Poland even though we were over the Schengen limit. However, recently, this last October, they changed it, so now that bilateral agreement no longer applies. A lot of my friends didn't care for it at all. Now that the bilateral agreement is over, they are struggling trying to figure out what to do next, how to apply for residency. There's just so many problems, right? Because they weren't prepared. I highly recommend applying for residency as soon as possible so you can get a lot of that waiting period out of the way. Mistake number 3 is not bringing enough of the right clothes. When I first arrived, I did not have proper winter clothing, and it made a pretty big difference because I didn't want to go out during the winter because I just wasn't properly equipped. It took me a couple of years to finally build a wardrobe that I am proud of, but I couldn't really buy a lot of clothes from here because after a few months, once you shop in a lot of the malls here, you realize a lot of the clothes are not the highest quality and there's not a lot of diversity. Here in Warsaw, thankfully, they have a couple of Uniqlo branches which will fulfill most of the needs that you have. They have a lot of the fast fashion brands everywhere like Zara, H&M, Pull&Bear, Bershka. I don't like buying clothes from them because I think they're quite low quality, but for like nice, solid, timeless pieces with a good fit made with high quality materials, I find it very difficult to find good clothes here. Mistake number 2 is ignoring Polish culture and etiquette. This is a problem not just here in Poland, but expats looking to move anywhere around the world. world. I am an advocate for if you're going to move to a place, you have to assimilate to that culture. So you have to act as the Polish people do and eventually speak the language. Polish people are very proud of their culture. They're very friendly to outsiders, but have a low patience for people who live here and refuse to learn the culture and assimilate to the culture. And I think that's totally justified. I don't think Polish culture is that confusing, especially if you come from an Eastern background. If you're Asian or Central Asian, if you're Slavic as well, you know, we have a lot of similar social culture. But don't try to bring your home culture here and try to change Poland. If you do that, you're gonna have a really bad time. I actually highly recommend Polish immigrants, like second or third generation Polish people who live in the UK or America or Canada, to come back. You guys are gonna be really amazed by what Poland has created, and it's gonna feel like home to you in a lot of ways because of the strength of their culture and their values. And the number one mistake is moving to Poland without speaking Polish. Now, there's a caveat. A lot of people are able to live here without speaking Polish. I know people who have done that for the last 5 years, 10 years, up to even 15 years, but I feel like you don't really get a deep experience because you're essentially a glorified tourist. Now, you don't have to speak perfect Polish because Polish is one of the most difficult languages in the world, but Polish people really appreciate the fact that you just make an effort. A lot of the important things that you have to do, for example, making a bank account, going to doctor's appointments, going to the supermarket, a lot of these things require you to speak Polish unless you're living in the most expensive gentrified areas in all of these cities. This is not like a really big problem if you are just looking to live here for a few months, but if you're thinking about immigrating here and living here for a long period of time, the language is a must. And it's gonna be shocking for some foreigners because it will be very difficult. But if you speak a Latin language already, such as Portuguese, Spanish, or Italian, I've noticed that a lot of those speakers end up learning Polish to a very good level because there's a lot of overlap in the grammar rules and stuff like that. If you are serious about moving to Poland, I highly recommend scheduling a strategy call with me where we go over what exactly you're looking for. I give you a recommendation on which city is the best for you, which housing option is the best for you. I also provide consulting on how to integrate socially, the dating scene, how to get a peso, how to legalize, how to open a bank account. All of these things I assist with. I highly recommend you guys watch this video next, and I'll catch you on the next one. Bye.